This week in Idaho, the Moscow murder trial may face a delay. A Supreme Court ruling allows Idaho's trans ban for kids to go into effect. And Representative Rasor's arsonist is sentenced to 15 years. Also, Idaho removes public addresses for lawmakers amid concerns. That and so much more. This is the Yocal Idaho Midweek Report, where we give you an overview of the news in Idaho for the last week. Welcome, glad to have you here as always. Happy Wednesday. We can celebrate that we are halfway through the week. The weekend's just in sight, almost there. We've gone through Monday, we've gone through Tuesday, now we're on Wednesday, or when you're listening to this, the end of Wednesday anyway. So all you got to do is Thursday and Friday and all the fun stuff that usually comes with that. It seems like most people have stuff that goes on Thursday and Friday nights, especially. Fun tip on that, if you're doing like a date night stuff, Friday night is actually the worst night in my opinion. Probably do that on a Monday. Most places, or some aren't open, but it's easier to get reservations and stuff on that. But with that said, I don't know if it's just me, but one thing I know is us as Idahoans love to talk about is the weather. And lately, it doesn't quite feel like summer. I know we're in June and it's supposed to be warm, and I'm actually very thankful that it's cooler, but it is rather weird to have like rain in June here in Idaho, especially down even here in the Treasure Valley. I know there's a little bit more precipitation that occurs up north. It's a little weird, but granted with the cooler weather, it does make it nice because we get to go out and do stuff. And with that, when the weather is nice and enjoyable to be out in, us as Idahoans get busy. You would think summer would be a little bit slower because you have different commitments or things that aren't going on. But the older I get, the crazier summer gets. But the nice weather makes it even more enjoyable. That said, stepping out of Idaho's pastime of talking about the weather, because I honestly don't have too much more to share because I have been very busy this week on the news because it has been crazy. I have a wonderful lineup for you. On that, the first half, as we hinted at, we have the Moscow murder trial and some updates on what's going on with that as it's getting close to its start. It's been going on, but it hasn't quite gotten into full gear. And then also, as you probably got from the thumbnail, the Supreme Court is standing for truth. More on that in a second. And Idaho becomes more aware, more modern. I know people from out of state have commented to me that lawmakers' addresses being so public is odd. And it seems that with stuff over Minnesota, Idaho lawmakers might be waking up a little bit on that. And then for the middle part, we'll have some news about abortion initiatives here in Idaho, or the one initiative. I shouldn't have put an S on that. It's just one singular one there. And how the language is being clarified on that to make it a little bit more accurate. Also mining, and the big, beautiful bill with gun protections. Yes, there's more being put in there. It's getting very big. We'll have to see if it's beautiful. And Nampa's mayor. And then to close out, we've got a bridge crash over in Twin Falls. You may have heard about that one on Twitter a little bit. The heavens, leaving a little bit of a cliffhanger with that. And an Idaho chef getting the James Beard Award, something that's very exciting. So stick with us for the whole report so you get all those stories. But to not leave you hanging any longer, we'll start with our first one here. Bryan Kohberger's defense team asked Judge Stephen Hippler last week to delay August's trial date. But the judge signaled he'll likely keep things on schedule. Defense attorney Ann Taylor told the court she needs more time to review discovery materials and prepare for what could become a death penalty case. Now, off the bat, you might think, why do we need more time? This has been going on for years and years. Here is the defense's reason for this that she raised, and it's two-pronged. The first is that prosecutors have turned over nearly 68 terabytes. Oh my goodness. I wish I had a computer with that much storage. It'd be so nice. But 68 terabytes of evidence, that's roughly about 17 million photos worth of data. Quite a lot. And then secondly, she pointed to the recent media coverage, including a Dateline episode that leaked sealed information, which could affect jury selection. As you can guess, the prosecutors don't quite want that. They're pushing back pretty hard. Former U.S. Attorney Josh Hurwitz called this a, quote, scorched earth, end quote, strategy, and warned against letting media coverage drive, quote, perpetual continuance. Man, I don't know why that's so hard to say, end quote. And he argued that the defense has had plenty of time with 3 attorneys, investigators, and experts working on the case. As for what the judge said, Hippler told both sides to prepare as if the trial starts in August, though he'll issue a written decision here soon. And getting to our main juicy story, last week brought some major news, good news at that, for Idaho families and children across the nation. The U.S. Supreme Court ruled 6 in favor, 3 against in the United States versus Skrmetti, upholding Tennessee laws that ban doctors from giving puberty blockers, cross-sex hormones, and sex change surgeries to children. This decision means, coming back to Idaho, our state's Vulnerable Child Protection Act can now take full effect. Attorney General Raul Labrador fought 2 years to defend this law, which makes it a felony for doctors to perform these procedures on anyone under 18. As for the Supreme Court's reasoning on this and diving into it, Chief Justice wrote in his majority opinion that Tennessee's legislature had a, quote, legitimate, substantial, and compelling interest in protecting minors from physical and emotional harm, end quote. The court found that these medical treatments are experimental and can lead to regret and irreversible risks. And the timing couldn't be better for us here in Idaho. The lawsuit challenging our law here just got dismissed after the families involved moved out of state. How fortuitous. This means Idaho can now fully protect all children from these life-altering procedures. Blinken Zadi from Idaho Family Policy Center, who helped draft our law here, said the evidence is clear that these treatments, quote, wreak havoc on developing bodies, end quote. The Supreme Court recognized that states have both the authority and responsibility to protect children from experimental medical treatments. This victory stands as something bigger than legal precedent. It affirms that children deserve protection, that parents matter, and that biological reality still means something in our culture. Idaho helped lead the way on this, though maybe not the primary law in the debate, and now has the highest court in the land upholding its position and others. And staying in the courtroom for a little longer, but just heading more north, Jennifer Susan Meyer received a 15-year prison sentence this last week for burning down State Representative Cornell Rasor's Army surplus store last 4th of July, if you remember. Myers will serve 7 years fixed with 8 years indeterminate, receiving credit for 336 days already served. The fire, if you don't remember, initially appeared to be caused by fireworks, because 4th of July. But investigators later determined that Meyer deliberately set the blaze. She was arrested, deemed mentally unfit for trial, which we covered, and then received treatment at Idaho State Hospital North before becoming competent to stand trial. Meyer changed her plea from not guilty to guilty of second-degree arson. The fire, looking at the impact on Rasor's family, was beyond just a business loss. They stored personal belongings in the building, including family heirlooms and Kim Rasor's art collection. Cornell told the court the store had been their livelihood for 43 years and served as a gathering place where they raised their children and employed their grandchildren. Rasor has since reopened the Army surplus in Ponderay. In his victim statement, he expressed hope that Meyer would have access to the gospel during her incarceration. And speaking of lawmakers and danger and crime and violence, the two kind of transition in here nicely, Idaho lawmakers can no longer easily be tracked down at home. The state quietly removed the legislature's personal addresses from the official legislative website after a gunman killed Minnesota State Representative Melissa Hortman and wounded Senator John Huffman in their own homes. The attacker, Vance Bolter, for context, had compiled a detailed hit list of Democrat officials and used online searches to find where they lived. He planned his attacks, visiting multiple lawmakers' homes that Saturday morning. Coming back to Idaho, Idaho Speaker Mike Moyle confirmed the addresses came down because of the Minnesota shootings. Lawmakers can choose to put their information back up if they want to. Other states also have acted fast as well. We're not the only one. North Dakota scrubbed addresses from their legislative pages. New Mexico did the same, and Colorado temporarily shut down their campaign database after officials asked to be removed. This move makes sense. Our representatives need protection from those who would harm them for doing their jobs and having really complex discussions. While transparency matters in government, basic safety comes first, because human life is very precious. It's made in someone's image. Lawmakers serve us better when they're not looking over their shoulders at home. This reflects a broader trend. Several states have also passed laws on this in recent years to shield political figures' home addresses from public view. Okay, if you've loved our first 4 stories and enjoyed the Midweek Report so far, do us a favor and hit the like and subscribe/follow button on YouTube, Rumble, or Twitter. It helps us stay connected with you so you can have more Idaho content and news, which, come on, that can't be a bad thing. And speaking of victories, we had another 2 major ones for protecting life that emerged this week, both in Idaho and across the nation. The Idaho Supreme Court, here locally, unanimously ruled that the sponsors of the 2026 abortion ballot initiative must rewrite their language to provide voters with clearer, more accurate information. While Attorney General Raul Labrador's fiscal impact statement was largely upheld with this, the court required revisions to ensure Idahoans understand exactly what this initiative would do, which in short is to legalize abortion in our state. The court emphasized the importance of, quote, clear, accurate, and impartial information, end quote, on ballots, giving voters truthful details before they decide whether to expand abortion rights here in Idaho. And then more nationally, but connected to Idaho as well, Planned Parenthood faces unprecedented challenges nationwide. Federal budget reconciliation bill could force nearly 200 clinics to close by cutting Medicaid funding for reproductive health facilities. The legislation specifically targets clinics that provide abortions and receive over $1 million in federal funding during 2024. Effectively singling out Planned Parenthood locations. More than a dozen of them have already closed this year. Here in Idaho, we've even seen the results, with Twin Falls location permanently shuttering in December, leaving just 1 clinic statewide here in Meridian. These funding cuts affect clinics even in states where abortion remains legal, with 90% of them at-risk facilities located in pro-abortion states. The closures make abortion services increasingly difficult, while ensuring Idaho voters receive honest information about ballot measures that could remove our pro-life protections, which I think most Idahoans really like. And stepping out of politics just for a second to go into the mines, I know, fun turn there. Perpetua Resources announced this past Wednesday that their stibnite, gold, and antium mine could expand significantly beyond the current size. The company told shareholders that they want to explore areas that could add about 2.4 million ounces of gold to the mine's existing 4.8 million ounce reserve. Marcelo Kim, who chairs Perpetua's board, said the company has identified over 24 new zones to explore and 9 priority targets. This area sits next to 2 pit mines already approved for development in the Eastern Valley County. The mine received final federal approval in May after an 8-year review process. Man, I feel like that's way too long. Hopefully Doge has done something about that. But in any case, once built, stibnite will become America's only domestic source of antium, a critical mineral essential for defense and technology. And to put that in a little bit of context, China currently controls most of the global antium supply and has cut off exports to America late last year. As for the funding and jobs aspect of this, Perpetua secured about $425 million in new financing to fund both the current plans and potential expansion work. The project could create 550 new jobs and help reduce our dependence on foreign mineral sources, as we just talked about. Construction should begin after the final state permit arrives this summer, with mining operations starting around 2029. Granted, that's a little further out than I would actually want. This represents a major comeback for Idaho's mining industry and strengthens America's mineral independence. And speaking of the mountains, but in a more fun recreational way, summer river season kicks off strong across Idaho as snowmelt from the Sawtooth and the Salmon River Mountains fill our waterways. I can definitely say that it has gotten quite full when I drove up there last time. The Boise River officially opens for floating this last Friday, June 20th, with flows holding steady at 1,275 cubic feet per second. As for the Payette River rafting system, it offers adventures for every skill level as well if you want to go a little further than Boise. Families can enjoy gentle class 2 and 3 rapids on the main fork, while thrill seekers can go all the way up to Class 4 and 5 challenges on the North Fork's lower section. Cascade Raft and Kayaks Kenneth Long explained that Class 3 rapids provide a, quote, fun splash, end quote, action without major danger, while Class 5 demands serious paddling skills. The Middle Fork offers a calm floating for beginners north of Crouch. And then if you don't want to travel as far, our popular Boise River also offers floating from Barbara Park to Ann Morrison Park. It takes about 2 to 3 hours and costs about $7 for parking, not including your raft and all that if you want to buy that or rent it. Over about 125,000 people float this route annually, so you won't be that far alone. But with all of these, safety remains key. Wearing life jackets, avoiding alcohol, and remembering that these are still wild waterways that demand some respect, because water is amazing and fun, it also can drown us. Idaho's rivers, though, showcase God's creation at its finest while providing family recreation and Idahoans one of their favorite pastimes. And speaking of another pastime that Idahoans love is shooting. And our Idaho Senator Mike Crapo is on his path to make sure that it is protected, which he has just made Trump's big beautiful bill even bigger and more beautiful for gun owners in the process. While the House passed H.R. 1, the Senate continues working through amendments. And Crapo sees the moment to include the SHORT Act, which you may be wondering, what is that? The SHORT Act would free short-barreled rifles and shotguns from the National Firearms Act's burdensome regulations. Gun owners have pushed hard for this addition, and it builds on existing provisions that already aim to remove suppressors from federal oversight. The Biden administration used these same NFA rules to target pistol braces, forcing law-abiding gun owners into an unconstitutional registry. Crapo and our other Senator Jim Risch have fought these overreaches before, and now they're positioned to roll them back. As Finance Committee Chairman, Crapo wields significant influence over this bill's path forward. Gun control advocates predictably oppose these changes, claiming that they make us less safe. But we know better as Idahoans, especially that we don't have that many mass shootings. We would say that removing bureaucratic barriers doesn't threaten public safety. It restores our constitutional rights that governments shouldn't have restricted in the first place. Speaking of restrictions, oftentimes the algorithm may not recommend our content because it's conservative and Christian, both things that aren't as popular as they should be. So please consider sharing this episode so people can be informed about what their senators are doing with the big, beautiful bill, or all the other fun stories that we've talked about and have more to come to. And then coming back more locally, Governor Little has directed state agencies to prepare for spending cuts, as our state remains fiscally disciplined after delivering historic tax reliefs to families. Agencies must now plan for potential holdbacks about 2, 4, or 6%, while limiting maintenance requests to essential maintenance spending. Now, the obvious question is, why the belt tightening? Which is a very fair one when you're seeing people tighten the belt. The state revenue sits at about $141.5 million below projection. And while lawmakers also this last session cut taxes by about $453 million, these cuts include reducing income tax rates, expanding military pension exemptions, and providing property tax relief. But the key part with all that is, yes, there's less money coming in, but we're nowhere near broke. We're just trying to be responsible. Idaho maintains a robust financial cushion that most states would envy. We keep about 22% of the general fund revenues in a rainy day funds, more than almost every other state. Lawmakers also left a $400 million cushion in this year's budget. Our rainy day funds have reached their legal maximum, providing over $1 billion in reserve. So with all this said, this responsible approach shows how serious leadership operates, rather than spending recklessly, like the feds do sometimes, or tapping emergency funds unnecessarily. They seem to be planning ahead when revenue drops. Our state's constitution requires a balanced budget, and these moves demonstrate that fiscal discipline that keeps Idaho strong. Hopefully, we're protecting both taxpayer relief for our families and our financial future by not spending more than we can afford. And And speaking of the governor and stuff happening in the state house, our state's land board just made a controversial move that has Attorney General Raul Labrador pushing back hard. The board voted to hire outside lawyers instead of using Labrador's office for legal counsel. I think that's the reason that his office exists, is for legal counsel, but we'll get into the mess. Labrador sits on the very board here that just voted him out as their lawyer. He cast the only vote against this change, calling it unconstitutional. Quote, "They've been trying to do this for a long time because they don't like to be told no," end quote, Labrador told reporters. The land board includes our governor, attorney general, secretary of state, superintendent of public instruction, and the state controller. They oversee how we manage 2.5 million acres of state endowment lands that support our schools and universities. Governor Little backed the change, pointing to Senate Bill 1292 that lawmakers passed this last year. This law lets the Department of Lands hire their own attorney instead of relying on the AG's office. As for Labrador, he argues that the department serves an instrumentally of the land board, meaning they can't be independent. This fight reveals some deeper tensions between who controls state land decisions and whether our elected AG should provide legal oversight. The question remains, though, does this help state land management or remove important checks and balances? And then heading from Boise over to Nampa, Mayor Debbie Kling announced she won't be seeking a third term as Nampa's mayor. After serving since 2018, Kling says she feels led to step back and let someone else take the lead. As for her legacy, Kling points to reduced crime rates and thousands of new jobs as key wins during her time in office. She admits managing Nampa's explosive growth has been her biggest challenge. The city gained over 20,000 residents under her watch. Now the obvious question is, who is next? On that, Rick Holboom jumped into the race shortly after Kling's announcement. The current Canyon County clerk previously served on the Nampa City Council and as Kling's chief of staff for nearly 4 decades. Kling endorsed Holboom, praising his experience and integrity. State Representative Bruce Skog, for his part, also backed Holboom, saying he trusts him to lead Nampa forward. If elected, Republicans would need to find someone to replace Holboom as the county clerk since his term runs through 2026. For those maybe interested in running, candidates can file between August 25th and September 5th, with the election set for November 4th. So far, Holboom stands as the only declared candidate to replace Nampa's longest-serving female mayor. And going from Nampa up to Cascade, a tragic crash on Highway 55 near Cascade claimed the life of a 30-year-old McCall man this last week. The collision happened on Monday morning around 6:54. The man's red Dodge Ram crossed the center line and struck 2 northbound trucks head-on. The McCall driver wasn't wearing his seatbelt and suffered critical injuries. He was airlifted to a hospital but died Wednesday from those injuries. Meanwhile, the other 2 drivers, one from Kuna and another from Emmett, walked away because they had their seatbelts on. The crash shut down Highway 55 for nearly 3 hours as emergency crews worked the scene. It is a stark reminder of how quickly our mountain highways, especially when you're enjoying the beauty of it all, can turn deadly, especially when basic safety measures aren't followed. While we don't know the exact cause of why he crossed the center line, we do know that a seatbelt might have made a difference between him going home to his family or the Lord. Our prayers go out to them as well for the tragedy that they are currently going through. For that story and many of the other ones we've talked about, please consider subscribing, because if you've made it to this point in the Midweek Report, probably means you love a lot about Idaho, so just come on, hit that subscribe button. You won't regret it. And having one more road-related thing, and then we can get out of this and back into the happy part. Last Sunday morning, Magic Valley lost one of their neighbors in a tragic accident at the Perrine Bridge. Richard Dean Krause, a 58-year-old Jerome man, died when his 1995 Ford Ranger went off the northwest viewpoint of the bridge around 3:30 p.m. Idaho State Police responded to the scene and found that Krause's pickup had struck multiple surfaces as it fell into the canyon. He was alone in the vehicle and died at the scene. Jerome County Coroner Dan Chatterton confirmed his identity after notifying his family. The bridge connects Twin Falls to Jerome County, a very high traffic area for locals and for anyone traveling through the area. ISP continues to investigate what caused this incident. They're asking anyone who saw what happened or has video footage to call District 4 at 208-324-6000 and reference case number T25000717. This reminds us how quickly life can change and how precious each day is. Our thoughts are with Dean's family and friends during this very hard time. And then out of the sad part, but still traveling more easternly, Power County has a new judge. The 6th Judicial District Magistrate Commission appointed Adam Strong as the new magistrate judge for Power County this week. The commission selected Strong from 11 qualified applicants after interviewing 6 candidates on June 16th. He'll replace Judge Paul Lagas, who retired August 1st after years of faithful service to the community. Strong brings solid experience to the bench. He's an Idahoan who earned his political science degree from BYU-Idaho and his law degree from BYU's law school in Utah. Currently, he serves as Boise's county magistrate judge, a position he's held since March 2023. Before joining the judiciary, Strong worked as Boise County prosecutor and as a deputy city attorney for Boise. This prosecutorial and municipal law background gives him valuable courtroom experience. Strong and his family love Idaho's outdoors and embrace our Idahoan values. The 6th Judicial District welcomes him and looks forward to his continued service. Having qualified and experienced judges who understand our state's matters, Strong's deep Idaho roots and legal experience position him well to serve Power County faithfully and effectively. And speaking of BYU and Eastern Idaho, last Saturday, families across Eastern Idaho gathered at BYU-Idaho for AstroFest, a celebration of God's magnificent creation above us, or the heavens if you want to go more classically. The physics department transformed the Romney Building and South Spore Quad into a space exploration wonderland from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. Kids dug through real meteorites that they could actually take home, while families peered through solar telescopes and watched rockets launch into the sky. Inside, the planetarium shows captivated audiences as they learned about NASA's Artemis mission to return humans to the moon. Professor Stephen McNeil, who has organized this event since 2017, watched families enjoy robotics demonstrations, geology exhibits, and hands-on science activities. What started as a Eclipse Fest has grown into something much bigger. Quote, "We increase the area of reach," Neil explained. The event reminds us that when we study the heavens, we're examining the handiwork of our Creator. Kids earned stickers for participating, but the real reward was sparking curiosity about the universe God designed for us to explore. And coming to our last story, I know, so sad we've gotten through them so quickly. Our state just gained another culinary champion. Chief Chef Salvador Alamilla from Ammon Restaurant in Caldwell took home the 2025 James Beard Award for Best Chef in the Mountain Region. He beat out chefs from Colorado, Utah, Montana, and Wyoming to claim this prestigious honor. This makes Idaho's second James Beard Award. Look at that, we have good food here in Idaho. Following Chris Komori from Kin in Boise, who won in 2023. Alama accepted his award at the Lyric Opera in Chicago on June 16th, thanking his team and specifically crediting the women who worked at Amano. Amano, which means by hand, serves traditional Mexican cuisine with a modern fine dining approach. It draws from Southern California, Oaxacan, and Michoacan traditions. Try to say that 5 times fast. The restaurant sits in downtown Caldwell and has been building a reputation since opening. Amilla expressed mixed emotions during his acceptance speech, reflecting on his immigrant story while acknowledging the current national discussion about immigration. He emphasized how important it is for his restaurant to serve as an inspiration for others who share his background. This recognition puts Caldwell and Idaho's growing food scene on the national stage, showing that exceptional cuisine can emerge from Idaho and in unexpected places in it. And speaking of unexpected places, there's always more to see in Idaho, and I plan to go explore more of them, and you should too. But that means I have to leave, so I'll have to bid you adieu. But thank you for listening to the entire report. I sincerely hope you found it enjoyable and valuable. If you like the Midweek Report, make sure to check out our other content on our Substack and other social media. We'll have those linked down below. Also, if we missed any important points or provided incorrect information, please feel free to reach out to us via email or on Twitter by tweeting us at @LocalYocal_Idaho. With the small team we have, we're not able to cover everything, but we do our best to cover the most important and interesting stories. Thank you for your continued support and assistance. That's all for now, and I wish you a fantastic rest of your week. Godspeed.